Welcome to China Manufacturing Decoded from Sofeast, the podcast where we take you through some of the major topics facing importers and manufacturers in China today. Hi everybody, thanks for joining us again on China Manufacturing Decoded. This is episode 69. It's Adrian here from the team and I'm here with Renaud, our CEO. Hi Renaud.
Hey, how you doing? Hi Adrian, hi everybody.
Hi there. Yeah, good. Thank you. Yes. Yourself?
Yeah, not bad. I was just realizing tomorrow is September as we're recording this.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, everything is just blurred between personal time and working time and working place and holiday place because people can't really travel as much as before. I mean, it's it all feels a bit blurry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a little bit of travel starting to start up now. Some lucky listeners might have been able to travel abroad somewhere, I suppose. But yeah, in the main, it's still a bit of a mess, isn't it?
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, today, now that I've got you with me, if you remember a few episodes ago, in episode 65, we discussed a number of different options open to buyers who are trying to source products from China. So, I mean, you can do it yourself. You can work with a company like Sofeast. You can work with, a sourcing agent. So these were the different options we gave. And in this episode, I wanted to explore further exactly what you do if you're doing it yourself. So getting your advice on how to identify potential suppliers, verifying, maybe a shortlist that you've made, and then cultivating some second choices. I guess these would be like backup suppliers or something like that. And just to sort of go through that early stage of sourcing and get those tips. I suppose this is going to be 2 or 3 parts, which we'll probably do over the following few weeks. So yeah, to begin with, I think the first question is, how do we, if we're doing it ourselves, identify those suppliers?
Yeah, it always starts with identifying the suppliers, right? And the right supplier, because you come to China, or metaphorically, you come to China, not really flying, but you can find everything pretty much in a lot of categories. You can find really cheap and crappy factory, that has no processes, nothing, just are unable to give it, to satisfy any expectations in a consistent manner, have very limited technical abilities, and then you can also have the very sophisticated multinational manufacturer that has a lot more capabilities, engineering capabilities than your team, that have been specializing in a certain category for many years, understand the market maybe even better than you do, and so on and so forth, and with impeccable quality. So most listeners want to go with something in the middle, right? Something that is right sized for them, something that is suitable, something that is the right fit, because the tiny shop that doesn't really know what they're doing, well, you're gonna have to have someone there nearly all the time during production, just to make sure that the products are usable or sellable, right, at a basic level. So the price that you pay might be low, but the total cost to your organization might be high. And still, even if you have, even if you put 2 people on site all the time, it doesn't mean you're going to get exactly what you want. Far from that. Okay, and then on the other side of the spectrum, you go with a really large, really capable, experienced company, but maybe your orders are tiny for them. They don't really care. Maybe their price will be very high. Maybe they'll be totally inflexible. Maybe, whatever, maybe they start to talk and then at one point they just stop communicating because they say, well, there's really very little business to do with these people. So you need to find the right fit. And that is really the key concept that people need to take away from this. There is no such thing as a good factory or a bad factory. I mean, yeah, I guess some factories are bad for all of their customers. Now, why are they still in business? Maybe they're not so bad for certain buyers who, don't care that much about poor quality, don't care that much about poor service, and so on and so forth. Maybe they extract a price that's low enough. Maybe there's something else that's interesting them. So even the worst factories that I can think of, even if they could be shut down by the government tomorrow because they're non-compliant to, for example, to pollution standards, still you can't say they are a bad factory in the absolute, because there might be some buyers out there for whom it's a good fit. And maybe it's the owner's brother who purchases everything, or the father or the son or whatever, and he has nothing to do with cost, quality, on-time delivery, and so on. True, but still, okay, it's the right supplier for them, whatever their situation and their desires, their needs are, right? So it's no such thing as good factory, bad factory. Yeah, so there's no such thing as a good factory. Why am I saying that? Because you can go to the best manufacturer of earphone for Apple, and let's say that you can catch their attention, which is already not easy. Let's say you catch their attention and they want to do business with you. They might be a horrible supplier for you, simply because maybe you say, well, you work on these AirPods and everything. You work with Apple when they developed it, and you have such capability with it. Okay, like, this is my design, just do everything. And then they will skip a lot of the things that Apple usually does. They might not design for reliability. They might not design for quality. They might pick the wrong components because you have a price point that's much lower, maybe, and then they go with some suppliers that they don't really know, and then they run into all kinds of troubles. So there's no such thing as a bad supplier or a good supplier. There is such a thing as a good fit supplier. That is really the key here.
It reminds me, the topic that you're talking about, of what you were talking with Max and Clive last week in the podcast. And some issues are actually caused by the buyer as well, in terms of poor communication of your standards and your requirements.
Oh yeah. So if you do not have clear quality standard, for example, so things like visual inspection standard, what is acceptable, not acceptable, a test plan, what tests does the product have to pass, and things like that. Well, you go to a great supplier and they're going to be thinking, whoa, this guy has nothing. We have to, sorry, I should not say good supplier. You go to a supplier with mature systems and processes. They're going to be freaking out. They're going to think, whoa, if we work with this customer, they can complain at any time. Since there's no standard, they can always complain about everything. This is really, scary. And they're going to work on something, and they're going to push you to accept something, right? And you go to the more disorganized manufacturer, kind of does everything by the seat of their pants, and always improvising, no clear processes, no view, no focus on anything further than 10 days ahead. You go to them and you say, well, I want this. Can you make it? Yeah, okay, fine. Just, wire the money and we'll do the rest. They make it look very simple. And they would not bother with, setting up a standard. I mean, come on. If they have no standard, it means you cannot complain about anything, because they will always have some excuse, right? So it's different approaches. Some suppliers will say, well, I'm afraid they might complain and we might not have a good answer. And then the others will think, well, that's good, because if they complain, even if we really screw up, even if we're really bad, they will complain. But we can always say, well, we thought it was okay for you. Well, the other companies that we deal with in your country, there's no problem with them. Well, come on, we give you a good price. Obviously, quality can be so good. And, you did not disagree with that because you never talked about quality. We had no clue it was even important to you, right? So who do you want to work with? It depends. It depends, because the more disorganized one, with very immature systems and processes, they will be cheaper probably.
Yeah.
And for certain things, they will be faster because they don't bother with risk analysis and, and control plans and things like that. They don't care. They just want to buy material, transform it, package, ship it to you. That's all that matters, and collect your payment and get to the next thing. It can actually be much cheaper when you look at the FOB price. But when you look at the total cost, maybe they send something to you and 5% of the products are defective. And sometimes it's 20%. So you really have to do your own inspection. So that's already extra costs. You ship that extra 5% to 20% of defectives. You paid for the freight and the duties and everything. And you have them, you paid for them in full. You have to discard them. And all of that is costly, right? But it's not in the FOB price. What do you want, right? And different companies have different answers to that. Ideally, everybody would want to work with, suppliers that do everything they can to minimize the quality issues, the reliability issues. Of course, that would be much better for the environment. Of course, much less waste. But that's just not the world that we live in, unfortunately. So that's why I'm taking a lot of precautions. I don't want to sound, judgmental. This is such a crappy supply, the worst factory I've ever seen, and things like that. And you're like, well, how come they're still in business? Oh, maybe they've been losing money for 5 years straight. Maybe they might owe a lot of money to their suppliers and things like that. Why? But it's better to say there's no such thing as a good or bad factory. There's a good fit or a bad fit factory, right? And to come back to our discussion of last week with Max and Clive, well, there was a point in the podcast, in the episode, where I asked, okay, so what to do if a supplier is just not good and they don't do anything to improve, or very symbolic actions, but it really doesn't lead anywhere. And both of them said, well, at one point you need to switch. So, and actually, the answer, the real answer to that question is, why did you pick this supplier in the first place, right? Why did you work with a supplier that's not interested in improving, that was not at your standard and is not interested in improving, right? So picking the right suppliers is extremely important, actually. If you do that wrong, you're just going to suffer all along, because, until you get back to picking the right suppliers.
Right. And so when we're actually trying to source those good fit suppliers, then what sort of give me a list of actions that you would suggest going through in order to build up a short list of decent options?
Well, yeah. So you got to think about it as a process. If you just go on Alibaba, pick a few people, or do a little search. Oh, this sample looks good. Let me contact them. Oh, they have good English. And you keep going like that. you might end up with very much the wrong people.
Mm.
So, and that might be fine if you're really in a hurry and it's going to be a very small order, right? So now let's say you're trying to actually build your business by finding the right sources that will support you for the next 5, 10 or more years. Okay. In that case, you want to follow a process. You want first to think, what is a good fit supplier, right? So it comes back to what I was saying before. What kind of supplier would be a good fit for us? Well, what size, what other kind of customers do they have? Because it does inform a lot about their general understanding of your requirements and so on. Do you need to develop products with them? Do you need them to have R&D capabilities? Do you, is your product very specific and there's a specific module that's very, very specialized, kind of niche? Do you want a supplier that actually knows that, already has experience in that, and so on and so forth? What are the criteria, basically? All right. They must accept a letter of credit on the first order, things like that. That's the first step. And the first thing I said is, what is the size of the supplier? So as I said before, very small workshop with no structure. It will in general be cheaper. It will in general necessitate more follow-up, more monitoring. It will be less consistent. So this might be okay if your orders are small. If you need really low prices and so on. Mm-hmm. Then you have the large manufacturers, 800 people, 2,000 people, 10,000 people, that have a lot of structure in place. Yeah, they're organized. Oh yeah, they have all the certifications that you need. They have a customer roster that is impressive. Oh, they work with such and such and such. Wow. However, you will be dealing with let's say your orders are not very large. Okay, you're going to represent maybe 0.5% of their annual output, or 0.1%, or maybe less. So do you think you will get their best salesperson to follow you? No, you're going to get the recent hire who knows very little. Do you think that you would get priority in production planning? Of course not. Do you think you'll be able to negotiate pricing? Of course not, right? Do you think you will be able to negotiate payment terms? Probably not. Do you think you can work with a lawyer to push them with some relatively favorable to the buyer kinds of terms? Probably not, right? So if you're too small in front of the customer, it's just too imbalanced. At one point, you have to go and look somewhere else. Except if you're buying very standard off-the-shelf products, that's probably not applicable, because it's like buying from a distributor. It's just sending an order, payment, and they ship it to you. But if you want more of an OEM or ODM relationship, a closer relationship, that doesn't work very well, right? So size is an example of a criterion that you really don't want to underestimate, to forget, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Okay, so that's step number one.
Okay.
And after that, well, you go fishing. You start from where are these suppliers that you're looking for? If they are large, organized, multinational, you will you will find them in the industry, trade shows. If it's cookware, you have to go to Chicago and so on. If it's electronics, go to the CES. Now, if it's more the small and mid-sized manufacturers, in normal times, you might want to go to the Canton Fair, you might want to go to the Hong Kong trade shows. And of course, more and more, you can find them, in Düsseldorf, in Las Vegas, and so on for different shows. But really, the place where you will find most of them without taking a plane is Alibaba.com, globalsources.com, madeinchina.com. These types of directories, they are basically advertising companies. They get paid by the suppliers. They don't charge anything, pretty much. Yeah, they don't charge anything to the buyer. That's not their business model. Their main business model is to get paid by suppliers to give visibility to suppliers. All right. So you go on one of these directories, and also if you want, again, mid-size or to relatively large, global sources is not a bad choice. If you want more smaller ones and as many as possible, then maybe Alibaba is the better one, right? I mean, they're not all the same. These directories are not all the same. Okay, so you go there, you search for the kind of products that you want to purchase, and you find some suppliers, and you do initial contact, right? So first, maybe there's a little bit of screening you can do there. If it's too obvious that it's a trading company, if you want to avoid the trading company, then just drop it. So for example, they have very different kinds of products. Maybe it's all, I don't know, Christmas ornaments, but they will supply you with the Christmas and the balls and and the packaging paper and all these kind of things. No. This is not a focused manufacturer. It just doesn't sound right. But if you want, I don't know, coffee machines, and you find a supplier and everything they do is about coffee machines, okay, well, there's a higher chance. Also look at the invested capital. It does provide some, a bit of a hint of whether they're a manufacturer or just a service company.
Yeah, it would be quite a lot more for a manufacturer, right? Because they've got to put enough investment into the company to cover, all of the wages of the staff and all of the rest of it, which would be significantly more for a manufacturer. Am I right?
So if it's a Chinese-owned manufacturer, they can, especially if it was set up a while ago, you might find, invested capital of 100,000 RMB or such low amounts. But if you look at trading companies, very often it's 1 RMB.
Right.
Right. So it's just an indication. If you see 5 million RMB, well, why would a trading company do that? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's very probably a manufacturer. Okay. So you look at these kinds of things. You do a little bit of screening first. Based on your ideal profile, you do searches. You look at their actual profile, and you see if it kind of looks like a match. And then step number 3 is to contact them. Now, different people go at it in different ways, and I'm really not an expert here. But if you send them a long email, they will just gloss over it and forget it. Only the bad suppliers that are not very busy will just keep trying to get at you. But the ones that are successful don't need many new customers. If you don't make it easy for them, they're going to say, well, what is that? Okay, next one. Right? You need to sell your project because, again, you want to catch the attention of the ones that, are relatively successful in getting and retaining foreign customers, and they tend to be more discerning, right? So I don't know, maybe your first order that you're planning is going to be already, in the order of $30,000 or $50,000. Okay, this is not a tire kicker, right? They're gonna think, okay, let's try to get this business. Seems like there's something here for us. If you've already been active selling the same kind of product in your country for years and you have a distribution channel and everything, say it to them, then, okay, it's not one of these wannabe Amazon sellers who know nothing but pick the product category that they think they can make money in and go ahead. No, this is not attractive to them. If you already have distribution channels, you already know your market, you know exactly what you want to do. This is more attractive because it has a better chance of leading to real orders, right? So that's the way you need to think. Don't send them a very long message, but send them what they need to see to really get to the conclusion, hey, this is not a bad customer maybe, okay? And then it will motivate them to respond. Try to appear organized. So if you appear very disorganized, again, the best suppliers will think, this one is going to be a pain in the neck. It's going to send us some messages on WeChat, on Skype, on email, on text message, and I don't know what. And we'll just lose track of what it is. He will forget to wire money to us. We have to push him 10 times. This is not very attractive. But if you come to them and say, okay, and I have a package here with some specifications of what I'm looking for, right? Or if you want to start with one of their products, you tell them, okay, that product right here, reference number XYZ1234, I'd like to have it with that color, this kind of packaging, and I send you some photos of it. I'm going to buy 5,000 pieces of it, and ideally, I see that your lead time is 45 days. Ideally, in 2 months, it would be on the boat. But what are the steps ahead? I need to get a sample that I approve first. You make it obvious that you have a little bit of a plan, and you have a process for approvals. Okay, so that screams, I'm not completely disorganized. I know what I'm doing. This is not the first time. Right? Because again, there's a lot of people, going on, let's say, Alibaba and contacting suppliers, and they have no clue what it takes to buy from China and to sell batches of products. And these people, well, guess what? you can send 20 emails back and forth with them and send samples and everything, but in most cases, the supplier doesn't get an order in the end. So again, the suppliers get a little bit discerning, and if you fit their profile, their stereotype of the new buyer who knows nothing and doesn't have a market and so on and so forth, that's not good. The suppliers who are busy will not respond to you, even though they might be the best. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. We are sort of going into the territory of the verification or vetting of suppliers that you found now. And I would add at this point that we did produce a little while back a whole series of podcast episodes about vetting suppliers. So I will share the link to that in the show notes, and you can listen back to those and go into the vetting in a lot more detail. So at this point, I suppose we're some way through verifying whether we've found the right sort of supplier. But if you've got a shortlist, you've got more than one on the shortlist. So if you found one that you think is a good fit, is that it then? Is it all eggs in one basket and the rest of the suppliers that appear to be also a good fit on your shortlist, just forget about those, or can we actually do something with them as and keep them as a backup or something?
Well, again, it depends on the context of what you're trying to do. But if you're trying to develop a business and set up your supply chain for, that would be the basis of your success for years to come. Yeah, try to have a backup source. Now, that's not always possible. A lot of people go to China and buy off-the-shelf products that already exist. For example, I don't know, a toaster, and then they say, okay, yeah, we think that toasters like this, there's a good market for them if they're at that price point. And then they go around and they say, oh, this one is perfect. That's what we need. And then they talk to them and then they say, well, no, in your country, Mr. Buyer, we don't have other customers. Okay, good. I will need you to produce it in that color with my logo in this packaging. Possible? Okay, great. Well, can you go to supplier B next week and say, I want you to make exactly the same? No, because they don't have the tooling for the enclosure. Most of the toasters have a plastic casing, and it's made with injection molding,
Sure.
and you need tooling, and it's not cheap. So you can't just shop around like this and have backup suppliers for the exact same product. In that case, you're going to be married to the same supplier for a long time, and if possible, if things go well, if that model works, and that makes it all the more important to follow a process in that case, because if you make a mistake, that can be costly. You make a mistake. Well, maybe the product you pick is selling very well, but then the supplier is not behaving very nicely. Is not ethical, let's say, and they raise the price, and they do all kinds of things, and they favor their other customers. Maybe they also sell to another company in your country the exact same product, and their shipments are late, and so on and so forth. But the product is selling well, and you don't have the money to put maybe $20,000 in tooling, and anyway, it would not be ethical on your side, because it's the supplier's model, the supplier's design. And by the way, one more reason to do a little bit more due diligence is this really the supplier's design? Or maybe an American customer paid for the molds and owns all of the intellectual property of that design, and you're going to resell that product without knowing that an American company owns the IP rights. What can happen to you? Well, maybe that American company also sells in your country, right? What can happen? You might get a letter from a lawyer.
Yeah, nothing good.
In unfriendly terms. Yes, right. So picking the wrong supplier, picking a design that already belongs to another company that is not authorizing you. These are very, very common risks. And a lot of people are just too optimistic. Okay, it's fine. Yeah, we'll see. I think it's fine. I trust the supplier. If I don't trust the supplier, then who can I trust? Blah, 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 And they might be lucky one time, 2 times, 3 times. Good for them. But that's not a good recipe for building a long-term business. That's what I would say.
No, well, we've discussed this before as well. I mean, and as you mentioned in the last episode with Clive and Max, if you are having this sort of issue with a supplier, and certainly this is a really serious one, maybe switching is the best option. So in that case, having other options is going to be useful, isn't it?
Yeah, so you go back to step number, what is it, 2, 3, and let's say step 3, you contact the suppliers, then you ask them a few standard questions, so you can start to gather some data, some facts, and maybe put them in a spreadsheet to compare them. Request a quotation for exactly what you want. Then you can compare that also, the lead time, the minimum order quantity, and things like that. Whatever is really important to your business. And, you pick one, you go ahead with them. If later down the road you see you made a mistake, you don't have to start everything from scratch again. Candidate number 2 that did not get your business might be the good one this time. So you ask them to update the quotations, you update them on where your business is at, and you might be doing much better business with them. So don't burn the bridges. Say, well, I might get back to you later, but now is not a good time. And then, well, later might be a good time to talk to them.
And you've mentioned sometimes maybe you place the bulk of your orders with the initial supplier, but you also give, a secondary one, maybe smaller orders, and keep them sort of ticking along.
So yes, in some cases that makes a lot of sense. If your orders are very small and it's already very hard for you to reach the minimum order quantity from the supplier, that's probably not going to happen.
Sure.
It's probably better to focus all of your buying power on one supplier to make your business more interesting to them. Now, if you are several times above the minimum order quantity level, then you might want to go, to develop the two suppliers at the same time. And if one of them, for example, if there needs to be some product development, but it's not very expensive, you might do it with 2 suppliers, and then one of them maybe is hitting a lot of roadblocks, is really suffering and taking them a lot of time. The other one is going much faster. Well, the one that's much faster is going to get your first orders and might be your first choice supplier. Now, if the second one catches up, if the price and everything else is equal, you might still give them, a first batch, and then a while later a second batch, so they don't forget how to do it. They did all the development work, so they get some production work, and then you can switch to them at any time. So whatever happens, boom, a COVID restriction, like what's happening right now in Vietnam, for example, hits their area, but doesn't hit the backup supplier's area. Well, your supply chain is more flexible, right? You can react. You might not be hit as bad as you would otherwise. So that's just an example. But maybe supplier number 1 starts to raise their price too much, starts to cause you all kinds of trouble with quality, with delivery, and so on. Well, maybe you warn them, and then you tell them, okay, you are my supplier number 2 now. The orders are going to be much lower, and I'll reconsider that if you improve your performance. And maybe you end up with 2 suppliers, roughly 50-50 or 80-20. But if you go too low on the second one, they might start to act, in unappealing ways just because your business is not interesting to them. So there's a lot of things to balance here. Good communication is important, I would say. Good communication, so they understand that they're sort of in a race. They have a challenge, and that's the prize. And there are second chances, but it's in the long term, yes. But if they do a big mess up, something really bad, then they're going to have consequences right away because you have the option. And that is really, that makes the buyer's life much more comfortable, right? When talking to suppliers, when the supplier knows there's another supplier Well, they tend to be a bit more careful.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, that was sort of an initial introduction to sourcing from China for anybody that's considering doing it yourself. And so we've covered identifying possible suppliers, verifying or vetting, a shortlist that you've made, and then also gone into just now a little bit of cultivating, a backup or a second choice. So yeah, thanks for that, Renaud. Some really great tips there. Until next time, Renaud.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Adrian. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, don't forget to like and share, and you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all other places that you get your podcasts from. See you next time.